Hello and welcome to another episode of AskBR. My name is Ronak and I'm one of the founders of Fully Filmy, a pop culture store that celebrates everything you love. And we're really excited to partner up with Film Companion South just for you. So, what you guys do is in every episode, you guys send in some amazing questions and BR answers them for you. But we thought we could take it a little notch higher. We wanted to reward you for your curiosity. So, here's the deal. In every episode of AskBR, the top 3 questions will win free t-shirts and goodies from fullyfilmy.in. So yeah, stay curious and cheers.
Thank you for that, Ronak, and all of you stay tuned to our social media handles on FC South to know who the winners of the Fully Filmy prizes are. So let's get on with the Ask BR for Sarpatta Parambarai. The first question comes from Vinod Raj. He wants to know what the criteria for FC Gold films are. Well, FC Gold is basically something that Anupama Chopra decided to institute because she felt that some films, we are very few in reviewers kind of thing, right? Like I do reviewers, Rahul Desai does reviews, Anupama does reviews, but there's a whole bunch of us at FC, the team that watches movies and does all the other articles and other things. And she thought this is a good way to get everybody to weigh in on whether a movie worked for them or not. So it's basically just a simple voting system where everybody who's seen a particular movie weighs in and then decide whether this movie is, in their opinion, eligible for FC Gold or not. And it turned out that a lot of us like Sarpatta Parambarai and it got an FC Gold. So that's all there is to it. Now, question number 2 comes from Navneet Balakrishnan. He asks, how well was the relationship between Pasupathy and Arya's characters depicted in the movie? Was the teacher-disciple subtext in the movie enough? Now, first of all, this is not subtext, this is the text. This teacher-disciple movie is the whole movie. There is no subtext here, it's the whole text. But where I will agree with you is the subtext is that Pasupathy is marvelous in the way he kind of keeps the motivations of Rangan Vadyar always hidden under the surface. They are never really fully clear. And I think that's a real wonderful thing about this film. So let's look at how their relationship progresses throughout the film. Now, like Pasupathy has been a boxer, and we get a few scenes of him in a wig and he's boxing and all that. Now, at a very young age, the Arya character is standing right next to John Vijay, that is the daddy character, and right at the edge of the ring and looking up at Pasupathy like he's a god and like he venerates him as he's boxing and he's mimicking his moves and all that kind of stuff. So that's the very first image we get of Arya, right? So from a very young age, he's been close to Pasupathy and he's been kind of observing him at a very close level. And then the next stage, we get Arya like practicing boxing in front of Pasupathy at night when his mother comes and drags him off because she's like, oh my god, why are you teaching these kids all these moves? They're going to go up and become gangsters. I don't want them to do that. So that's the second time we see Arya with Pasupathy together. Now, after these two incidents, we don't see Arya with Pasupathy until he's a grown-up because his mother doesn't like Pasupathy, being near Arya, and so he kind of respects it and says, okay, you go and do your own thing. But unknown to him, Arya has been looking at Pasupathy's everything and been learning from him, kind of like, that's why John Vijay calls him a bathroom boxer, right? He's been practicing all his moves, but he has never been on a stage. So now let's see how the relationship develops further in the film. Now, obviously, this is a small community, and so everybody knows each other. So even though the first meeting of Arya and Pasupathy we get as adults are when Pasupathy screams at Arya for getting angry because of Wembley's taunts after they have won, right? After that team has won. Pasupathy screams at Arya and says, you're just like your father, why don't you just fuck off? Now, so that's the first time we see Pasupathy and Arya as adults. But a little after that, we see that, like when his mother comes, Arya's mother comes to invite Pasupathy for the wedding, Arya says, "Unga kaila dhaan tali edukano." So it's like, you have to give the tali and only then will I tie it around her. So Pasupathy knows. He knows that this boy is there, that the boy worships him, and this kind of thing is there, right? And then Arya gives a ride to Pasupathy on his cycle to see where this Raman is. Now, Raman is supposed to be the guy who's boxing Wembley and who's going to save the entire Sarpatta Parambarai, the clan. So where is this guy? He's missing. And this is when the real relationship starts between Pasupathy and Arya. So while driving Pasupathy to where Raman is, Arya recites that he knows everything that is there to know about Pasupathy's achievements. He knows this, he knows he's beating that. He says you could have been the Muhammad Ali and all that kind of stuff. Pasupathy is kind of lost in thought, but then he's still listening. And when Arya says you could be the Muhammad Ali of India or whatever it is, he's just like, what, kind of a thing. So I got the sense of his kind of, he's a man with a bit of ego, with a bit of pride, with everything. Because if he hadn't had that pride, if he hadn't had that brashness, he would never have accepted the challenge that just one fight, and if that we don't win that one fight, then the whole Parambara, the Sarpatta Parambarai is going to go away. I don't think a very rational man would accept such a challenge. So there is an impulsiveness, a brashness in him that says, okay, you know what, I've got to take up this challenge. So when on this cycle, and he's being reminded of all his glory days, it's a kind of a bit of an ego massage, right? And then they reach the place where Raman is training with some military coach. And that really enrages Pasupathy, and that really enrages Arya as well. And then they come back, and then Arya challenges Raman to a fight. And when Arya knocks Raman out, imagine what a wonderful feeling it must be to Pasupathy's ego. That is like, you went to the military coach and wanted to train there, right? Now look, I have you beaten by somebody who was not training with me, but who was just merely looking at me and observing my moves. What a huge ego massage it must be to this guy. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, he's a manipulative guy, but what I'm saying is, like every fighter, like every creative person, there is an ego inside him, in the sense that craves a bit of self-satisfaction. And imagine what a high that moment must have been for Pasupathy. And my favorite Pasupathy moment in that bit is the way he averts his eyes when Arya says, Rangamvadya Sishyanda, and then Pasupathy is like, well, I don't know exactly what to do with that, but well, I want you. So he's doing that with his eyes. If you see the film again, you'll see that. And that's just simply wonderful. And once all these boxes have been checked off, that is, Pasupathy knows Arya worships him. He's been practicing all his moves. He's capable of defeating Raman and all these kinds of things. And he knows everything there is, like, kind of to know about boxing, at least at a theoretical level. When the challenge is actually, they talk about the challenge in that wonderful scene in that tent with the boxing ring, then Pasupathy proposes Arya's name. And Arya says, no, my mother won't agree to this. So what does Pasupathy do? He says, Seripa, enna manichidunga, na inga kalamburen. Every other time when he says, na kalamburen, or whatever it is, he gets angry, he walks out in a huff, right? He storms out of the place. But at this particular point, what does he do? He's just like, he does this, and Arya says, what are you doing, coach? Why are you doing all this kind of stuff? Pasupathy is just standing there. He's not stormed off. It's not like Arya has to follow him and get him from outside. Pasupathy is just standing there because he knows. This is my interpretation, but I think he knows that Arya will accept the challenge simply because he asked for Manipur, and that is really something that Arya cannot bear. That his coach is doing this, like lowering himself in front of somebody else's eyes. That Pasupathy knows, and Pasupathy plays on that in order to get Arya into the ring. Now, I'm not saying therefore Pasupathy is a bad man, but remember that this is a Parambarai, there is Manam involved, this whole thing is about Manam and all that kind of stuff. So imagine what Pasupathy is feeling at that point, right? So he's manipulating gently Arya into saying yes, and therefore the relationship starts. Now, is the relationship then kind of, on a steady level? Yes, because Pasupathy gives everything to training Arya because he knows that this guy is capable of it. He just had to make him agree at that one point, so that bit of manipulation was needed. But once that guy agrees, he gives everything to the relationship, and then the relationships follow parallel. Once Pasupathy is arrested and he's taken away to jail, Arya's career also dives, because without his coach around to give him inspiration, he's nothing, and he loses every sense of self-worth. And then when Pasupathy is released, Arya kind of takes an upward this thing again, because he wants to prove to his coach also that yes, I am back, this is who you are, I'm Ranganvatya's Sisyan, and I will never be a loser, and the kind of thing. So their fates are inextricably intertwined, and that is why you will find that this whole thing is about this very, very different kind of boxer and coach relationship. The next question is from Niranjan G. He asks, was there a moment or scene in Sarpatta that makes BR's mind go brilliant execution? To me, it was the last 10 seconds of the Roses fight scenes execution and editing after Kabilan drops his guard. Yeah, that was fantastic, but let me tell you which is my scene that made me go, oh my effing god. That really happened when in the tent, these guys have a discussion about who is going from the Sarpatta clan to have a fight with Vembuli. That scene is, to my mind, the best edited scene, the best staged scene I have seen in Indian cinema this whole year. Now, the first shot of the scene is from the one side of the boxing ring, where we see the whole, it's a wide shot, and we see on the one side we have Pasupathy and co, and the other side we have Vembuli and that gang. And then from there we slowly move to mid shots. We move to a mid shot of Pasupathy, where we see kind of, just him sitting there as if he's the only one representing his clan. There's no one beside him. Whereas here, when we see Vembuli, he's always seen with his coach. If you notice that Vembuli in this particular sequence is always framed beside his coach, he's never framed alone. Then after Pasupathy's camp is established and after the Vembuli's camp is established, what happens? The outsider enters. So we see Arya and Daddy come inside from the outside because they are outsiders. They're coming in after these two guys have assembled for the meeting. So now the shots start getting slightly wider. We see more of the Vembuli and his gang. We even see Dancing Rose in a corner. We see more of Pasupathy and his gang. We see Meeran on one corner. We see Kaliyarasan on another corner. And all in the same frame is what I'm talking about. And then when Pasupathy kind of has some words with them and he sits down, his eyes slowly notice that Arya is in the picture, that he's standing next to Kaliyarasan. Now look how this framing is, in the sense that Pasupathy doesn't have to do that. He just notices, like he's this really observant guy, and he kind of, it's like, the corner of his eye has noticed that Arya is there, and therefore he can make Arya the guy who's going to fight Vembuli. And now we get an expression that I think tells us something very crucial about this character of Pasupathy. It's an almost haughty expression as he says, okay, this guy is going to fight Vembuli, right? Now behind him we see Daddy, we see Kaliyarasan, we see Arya, and all of them are looking at him like in a bit of shock. And notice that Pasupathy has not asked Arya whether he wants to fight or not. He is saying on his own for Arya. He's speaking for Arya. And then we cut once again to Vembuli, who's again framed with his coach, like I told you. He's never framed alone. Whereas here, Arya begins to argue, saying that, look boss, this is what will happen. My mother will kind of beat me up. And we see all three of them in the frame. And then a person in the middle of both camps gets up, and therefore we see this guy in the middle through the ropes. So we get a shot from there, and then we get a shot of Pasupathy all alone. He's isolated because it is his decision. It's no one else's. It's his decision. And then we get a shot of Vembuli again framed with his coach, but this time there's also Dancing Rose with them, and they are plotting something. And we see Pasupathy between the space of Vembuli and Rose. Kind of, we see them in the far corner. We know what's happening. We know the distance between them. And then we get the shot of Arya looking at Daddy, because Daddy is a father figure, and Arya is like, can this happen? Can I even think of this? Because he wants to, but he's also scared of his mother, and nobody knows the relationship between Arya and his mother better than Daddy. But when Pasupathy does that Manipur thing and says, okay, I'm sorry boss, I'm really sorry, I'm going to leave this thing, let's just forget everything, I'm just going to leave. Arya issues a challenge, and now only Arya and Pasupathy are in the frame. Now, obviously, I'm not listing out all the frames in the shot, right? Because that'll take 10 days. But I'm just looking at the crucial frames. Now, again, here's another very interesting frame where Dancing Rose is kind of closer to us, right? Compared to the rest of the people in his group, in his gang. Because Dancing Rose is the one who's going to take up the challenge. And now we get a beautiful, beautiful kind of I think it's almost an inadvertent framing, because there is this pillar that supports the thatch roof, and it is cleanly dividing the two sides, with kind of one side being Pasupathy's and the other side being Vembuli's. And here is the most interesting shot. Usually we see people from Pasupathy's point of view, that is, this gang sees that gang, therefore the camera is here and we see the other gang from Pasupathy's point of view, or the camera is on Vembuli's side and we see Pasupathy and co from their point of view. But here for the first time, one person from this gang, that is Vembuli's gang, is seen through Vembuli's viewpoint, but on Pasupathy's side. And who's that? Dancing Rose. And why? Because I think Dancing Rose is the one guy who's principled in that gang. He has some sense of honor. Even though he's mocking them at this point, he's the one guy there who's actually saying that boxing is an honorable sport. Not at this point, much later we learn, but in this way we also kind of learn that there is some connection between him and Pasupathy's side. And notice the last scene, once again Vembuli is framed with his coach. He's never framed alone. So that's it. That's my favorite scene in the whole movie. It's like I've seen it so many times now I've forgotten, but each time I see it, it's brilliantly shot. The camera angles are perfect. The staging is absolutely magnificent. Everybody's going on about the staging of the boxing sequences, but for me, what really tells a director is good at staging is how he stages the conversational pieces, because they are flat. You can't do anything about it. In boxing, people keep moving. The max you can do is maybe cross the 180-degree line and kind of confuse people by, first this guy's on the right and this guy's on the left, and then your camera is kind of going around, and now that guy's here and this guy's here, so that the audience is kind of disoriented, because like, oh, I thought he was on this side, what's happening now? And that confusion adds to that feeling of like, how boxing is, because people are going all around. This is not that kind of stuff. This is just plain conversation, and to stage this way, genius. Another frame that I really, really liked is when Arya begs his mother for permission to go fight. I mean, he's like not really begging his mother, but he's like saying, look at me, look at what I've been reduced to. No, they're saying I'm not a boxer. They're saying that, this is what it is. And then his mother, if you see Anupama Kumar's frame, everyone is looking at Arya. Only Bhagyam, that is the mother, is facing us. Everybody else is looking at Arya. So that's another lovely frame of like how perspective can change our way of looking at characters. So everyone is looking at Arya, Bhagyam is facing us, and her face is like really scrunched up. It's like, wow, like it's almost like all the pressure that's been building up inside her is in just that face right there, because it's just waiting to explode, and it does in a bit. The next question comes from Mohan Raja, who says, do you really think that in the climax Kabilan giving credit to Rangan is credit because BD Tata is the one who trained him at last? And Adar Seyaladan asks a similar question, why did Kabilan say Rangan Vadya Shishan Da in the climax when it was BD Tata who made him come back to form? See, BD Tata doesn't arrive out of nowhere, right? Because early on, when Rangan Vadya is explaining the history of Sarpatta boxing, or rather the history of boxing to Kabilan, to in that long shot, that long unbroken like single take shot, he talks about B.D. Rayappan. So B.D. Rayappan has already been introduced to us as a legend in like Kabilan's mind. So when this dip happens, Arya is not kind of himself gone there. His mother, Bhagyam, tells John, Vijay character, Bhagyam tells daddy to say, where is B.D. Rayappan? Take him there because Rangan won't train him anymore. And I don't know, part of me says that this is part of Pasupathy's manipulation, because he's like, you really need to kind of, learn a different way of doing this, because I'm like, in my principles, I will never agree to train someone who's picked up like an Arua and tried to kill someone, right? Who's picked up a weapon, because that is exactly what your mother did not want to do. So I cannot train you this way. But maybe he sent word to B.D. Rayappan and says, train this guy, he's a damn good guy. Or maybe Pasupathy had nothing to do with it at all, and B.D. Rayappan just happened to be like doing his thing in the sea, he's catching fish or whatever, and then Arya is taken there and he begins his training. But either way, it doesn't change the fact that Rangan Vadyar is the be all and end all for Arya. That's the mantra he's been reciting from when he was a kid. Rangan Vatya Shisheda, from that initial frame that we saw of him standing right at the edge of the boxing ring with John Vijay and looking up at Rangan Vatya like a god and watching him fight, that has been his mantra. So he's not going to forget the guy who made him get into boxing, the guy who made him worship boxing, the guy he worshipped himself. Just because this training happened, he probably says, like in his mind, he thanks him or whatever. But at the end of the day, he is Rangan Vadya's Shishan. So I don't think there is a big dichotomy here. I just think it's that, like, he kind of needs to prove himself to his Vadyar again. And B.D. Rayappan is the instrument that helped him do it. The next question comes from Gokul T, who asks, the second part of the movie where Kabilan is addicted to alcohol and exporting it illegally, having a bad term with his wife and becoming a father, losing interest, it's where the shots edited and cut too fast make this movie so dramatic. Is it so? And a similar question comes from Nabil Renaz. Don't you think the movie would have worked better as a TV or web series? I love the film. The only issue was the montage sequence where we see Kabilan's downfall. It felt rushed. Yeah, I too felt like it was rushed. And one thing that really bothered me was I wasn't really getting the graph of the Kalairasan character. Yes, I got it. First, he has this wonderful outburst scene at home. This family has an outburst, and Pasupathy says, well, if you were good, why am I going to look elsewhere? You're my son, of course I'm going to choose you, but you're just not good enough. And that really hurts him. And he goes on to do something that is really going to anger his dad, who's a DMK loyalist. He goes and joins the AIDMK, and he knows that he's going to anger his dad by doing that. So he's kind of on opposite sides now. But then afterwards, getting into this, you've heard stories about the AIDMK and how some members of the party or some people there used to kind of were in the liquor business or something like that. I'm not sure about those stories, but I think a lot of that kind of political backdrop had a lot to do with what was happening here. Like, I did feel it was rushed, but then I also felt that this allowed the movie to breathe a little in terms of the Mariamma character, who was not seen much outside of her, because this is the boxed in thing, right? You have a big boxing stretch beginning with a brilliant 20-minute opening stretch before the title is announced, and then you have the main fight, right? So like for the longest time, except for Mariamma's marriage and her entering this house, there's very little that she does. This is a chance to show how somebody like this, is like affected when her husband takes to drink and kind of loses his sense of motivation and is kind of just lying there without a thing. And I think there's a brilliant scene where she gets to fight the villains off with the baby in her arms. She hands out the baby to somebody else, of course, and then that is like immediately cut to the flashback of that Arya has of him as a child and watching a very similar scene that his mother faced. So I wouldn't say that the stretch is a total loss, but then yes, it's been edited way too fast and we don't kind of register the feelings as much as we do in the other like portions, the pure boxing portions. And also like that scene where, when after B.D. Rayapan trains Arya and then this bunch of thugs appear out of nowhere to kind of attack him, that fight felt really strange and coming out of nowhere. And then Kalarasan comes even more out of nowhere. So it's like, what's just happening here? But I think this is a question of like maybe they overshot it a bit and tried to kind of like bring it down. But because the narrative is kind of generally going on, I didn't think it was like a huge deal breaker at this point. But yeah, but I agree with the part that this portion is a little like really they try to stuff a lot into this, and I think it would have helped it had these portions been allowed to breathe a little more. Jaidu Physio asks which scene made me mist up or cry, and I think I mentioned this in my review as well. It is when Arya kind of says, like, I'm not a shishyan to my coach, I'm not a son to my mother, I'm not like a husband to my wife, but I have to prove who I am, and therefore he kind of, and Santhosh Narayanan's anthem kind of rises in the background. And another thing that really kind of affected me that whole stretch is after Arya walks off, we see Pasupathy's expression, and he's like, have I underestimated this guy, or what's happening, what's going to happen? And I think I was really kind of moved by that, because we're seeing a parting of two very interdependent souls, right? One of them is walking away and one of them is staying, and that they'll come back together in the end. But this is almost like one of those romance movies where the couple splits, and I think that was very affecting to me. Supersonic Spinach asks, share with us your favorite sequences that you might love to rewatch with delight. I've just told you one major one. There are other ones as well, but more than that, I'll take a second question, which is, what are the unique little things in Sarpatta that you think total up and make it stand out from other fantastic sport dramas? The unique things are, of course, the Ranjithisms, right? Like the setting of the movie, the robe that Neelam wears, and who's Pasupathy's disciple, and Pasupathy is a DMK loyalist. It has that red robe has the emblem of the rising sun, whereas the robe that Vembuli wears during that match has like the saffron, white and green, which is like the Indian symbol, which is like a border, like a piping kind of thing. And that is basically a fight between DMK and India, the Indian government, the Indian center, in the ring, which is kind of, because DMK is the only government that is resisting the emergency imposed by the center. So these little things, of course in a Ranjith movie there are like 100 things, and I maybe get about 20 if I'm lucky, but this is like one of those things that really stood out for me, and I thought that was like really very subtly done. It was very nice. Another thing that makes this really different from the usual sporting movie is the training montage, right? Because what happens in a usual training montage, they have all this heavy duty gym equipment or whatever it is, and that's what they do. But this guy is by a very calm sea, and he's catching crabs, and he's diving into the ocean, and he's almost becoming one with nature in a way, and kind of finding himself, and kind of that something about that really worked for me, because I'm a big believer in things like finding yourself, your true nature. I really believe in that, and this part really spoke to me. Though whether you ask, if when you ask me if it spoke to me the way Ranjith intended to, I don't know, because I really like this anthem, Niye Tadai Niye Vidai, like you're the obstacle and you're the answer. For me, it's an inspirational anthem. And later, I read an article where Ranjith said that they're actually lines that were Buddha's philosophy, and they wanted to incorporate them in part of the song, right? But for me, the song works even without knowing that. I mean, knowing that adds an extra layer that this is what the author's intention was. But even without that, the song works because we've heard so many tattva padals in our life, right from MGR's times, like this one that Kannadasan wrote for Vetekaran, உன்னை அறிந்தால் நீ உன்னை அறிந்தால் உலகத்தில் போராடலாம் உயர்ந்தாலும் தாழ்ந்தாலும் தலை வணங்காமல் நீ வாழலாம். Like it's self-empowerment, right? உன்னை அறிந்தால் நீ உலகத்தை போராடலாம், then even if whatever the situation is, தலை வணங்காமல் நீ வாழலாம். I could take that line as well and place it here, and I could play beautifully against what Ranjith is trying to say. So I'm saying that maybe I'm not getting some of the things the way Ranjith wants me to get them, but like, as a movie, that's the beauty of it. It's like those who get the text and the subtext and the subtext that Ranjith puts in here, they are like probably watching the entire movie the way Ranjith wants them to. But this movie works on its own terms as well, as like a superb piece of filmmaking and as a delivery message for whatever Ranjith wants to say, as in like the empowerment thing that he's giving Arya, because like let's face it, all sports movies are self-empowerment movies, right? There is no sports movie where like there is a super rich kid who just decides to take a sport for the sake of taking the sport. They're all poor people, from whether you take Rocky or whether you take anybody, they're all very very poor people who kind of take up the sport to prove something, that they can do it, that they can rise up in life. So that challenge is there for everybody, not just for like Arya, or not just for this community, not just for Dalits. Like the sports movie genre is what I'm talking about. It's like it's like a self-empowerment genre, but to have these specific touches, I think that adds a lot to the way you watch Sarpatta Parambarai. Quantum Cigarette asks, what do you think of the cool, almost midnight film surreal qualities that the film has, like the absurdly funny dancing Rose, the character of Vijay, and a cooler version of the unknown genius coach with unconventional methods character? You summed it up beautifully. It's like he is that guy, right? Who's like this strange guy with these strange methods, Vijay, and he's like, but the thing is, like, he's not quirky. He's like, I'm very zen, I'm one with nature, I'm very Buddha-esque kind of, like, I'm very one with kind of a thing, and I'm going to use my quirky methods, and he could become a character like in himself. And with Dancing Rose too, what I really liked about that character is that, of course, he's absurdly funny, like you say. He's that scene is such a knockout that I think it's going to be viewed like millions of times in the future, anytime anybody wants a smile. And the actor is so fantastic. I mean, like, his body movement is like, it's such a flexible thing that it's like dance. It's beautiful. But the man is also so principled. That's what really got me, It's like he's kind of taunting these guys every time he gets a chance and everything like that. He and Mariamma are the only two people who actually voice this out, that there is some like value to may the best man win. That's the philosophy that Dancing Rose follows. And even though he's got his own ego and he's got his own, like, oh, I've got so many fans and stuff like that, he's like this really principled guy, and that thing I really liked. And that's what you get when the screenwriting is good. You get layers to a character that could have been easily one-dimensional, and we would have still liked them with that one dimension. Manohar Venkatesh asks, since the movie has so many memorable supporting characters, which one would be best suited for a spin-off? I would really like a spin-off of Daddy and his wonderful wife, who I really wanted to see more of, because it's like there's this wonderful insult that she gives him. Kevin, you frozen frog, or something like that. I just bust a guts, laughing at that. It's like, how did that family come to be? They don't seem to have children. They've adopted, it's almost like they've adopted Kabilan as their son. But the more important thing is that he was best friends with Kabilan's father. So I think a prequel with them would be really fantastic, because there's this wonderful line somewhere in the movie that says, at one time, I hope I'm remembering this line right, at one time, like, Kabilan's father used to rule Madras. Like he used to be this big, feared guy. Now that's all come down, and now this community is just lying there, like insignificant, which is why at the end when Kabilan goes to fight, they're saying you're not fighting for yourself, nee janangalukkaga poraadra. So that's kind of where it comes from. But anyway, going back to this character, I would really like to see Daddy as a young kid, and kind of having a prequel with him. I think that would really be something. In fact, the whole movie has so many characters that are so interesting that I think you have a possibility of spin-offs like Better Call Saul for Breaking Bad. Now, M. Sham asked this question: did Vembuli really blink? I don't think he did, because when I saw the film, I was like, he didn't blink. So why is this guy starting the fight? Because he does not want this guy to win. He doesn't want Kabilan to win. He wants Kabilan to be humiliated, because Kabilan's father used to be his slave, and he's like a dominant caste guy, and he doesn't want Kabilan to win at all, and therefore he starts the fight. No, but Vembuli did not blink. One question I wanted to ask Ranjith if I ever met him was like, was there a significance to the tiger tattoo on Vembuli's arm, apart from the fact that his name is Vembuli? If any of you know, leave an answer in the comments if like there's a political significance to this or something like that, because I would really be interested to know that. Ashok Paul Raj asks, discuss the differences between Madras and Sarpatta Parambarai in terms of writing. I felt the screenplay is more tight and coherent in Sarpatta than Madras. This is a slightly tough question, because as a pure screenplay, if you just look at the events and the way they unfold, I think Madras is better written in a like a thing. But the problem with Madras, at least for me, is that everything is a little cliche. There's a romance, because there's a big hero, you end up having to give him a heroine. There has to be a bit of a romance. There's, the hero's best friend is there, and then the best friend dies, and then, they're manipulated like Kamal Hassan was in Satya, or the guys in Subramaniapuram, where they're manipulated by politicians. For me, the one really, the brilliant thing in Madras was the wall, and the way it was like, it almost became an object of horror in that movie, because, accidents happened around it, bad things kept happening until they kind of decided to paint it blue and kind of, negate its ill effects, so to speak. But otherwise, though the writing is tighter, the events are less interesting to me than the events in Sarpatta Parambarai. So that's another really important thing that I read in a screenwriting book. It's that the newness factor can override the fact that your screenplay is not as perfect as it can be, because the characters in Sarpatta Parambarai are so new, and because they are so like vibrant and alive and believable. Like we don't have to say things like how does Karthi know how to fight so well? We do it. We automatically take it for granted, because like there's one very ugly kind of cutting that Ranjith does there, where he kind of compares Karthi's football moves with his fight moves, and I don't know, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here, because with Arya you can kind of show him drunk, you can show him falling at his wife's feet, you can show him slapping his mother, you can show him doing anything. So it's like you don't have to worry about image. With Madras and later with Kala and Kabali, that is what happens when you have an actor with an image. You kind of you end up like having to play a bit to that image, in which case you cannot really kind of say the things that you really want to say in the form that you want to say. Whereas in this movie with Arya, there is a line where he says that, where this dominant caste guy tells him that if a cow dies in my house, then you can go and skin it, or clean up the body or something like that. So like there's a really like very obvious and direct line like that, because I don't know if you can have such a line when like a really big star is there. So I would say that the screenwriting as such, if you look at just the way the writing is, it's much tighter in Madras, but I prefer the screenplay here, because it's also more difficult to write for so many characters, and though it is not a tight screenplay, it's a very refreshing and involving screenplay is the difference that I would say is what's there between the two films. Dr. CGS asks, how important is historical research on a topic relevant for detailing in a period film like this? I would say it depends, because a majority of the people watching this movie are not going to be familiar with the exactness of many of the things, right? Was the Pallavan bus really red at that point? Supposing the team hadn't done the research and the Pallavan bus had been blue or green or something like that, would it have killed the movie? No. See, the most important thing in a movie is the emotional detailing. If you get the emotional detailing right, everything else becomes right. Because even if, like geographically you're a bit off, historically you're a bit off, somebody says, no, no, this event actually happened 2 months after they say it happened, or whatever it is, you won't feel that while watching the movie. Because what matters most are the characters and the emotional graphs that you give them. And that's where Sarpatta Parambarai scores, which is not to say that they did a whole bunch of research, and at least to my eyes, a lot of it was very convincing. But I would say that historical accuracy is not that crucial in movies as much as emotional accuracy. Arvind GI asks, he wants me to compare Tufan with Sarpetta. Is this the perfect example of how the same template can be executed differently, or is it purely director's brilliance? Hypothetically, do you think if we swap the directors, the result would be different? I think it's the director's brilliance, because he, like Ranjith. I mean, I love Rakesh Om Prakash Mehra, and I'm one of the few people who really like Mirzya, because I thought it was a very, very bold, formal experiment in filmmaking. But I did not like Bhag Milka Bhag, and I did not like Tufan either. What really makes Sarpata stand apart is that it transcends the boxing cliches with its personal arcs. For me, that is always very important. And the only personal arc that was interesting to me in Tufan is the coach character being an Islamophobe. That is, Paresh Rawal is an Islamophobe because whatever happened to his wife, and his daughter falls in love with a Muslim fighter, and he finds that out. And I think that was the only point of interest, is how are they going to deal with this aspect? Because after that thing happens, I'm trying not to spoil this for people, but how will Paresh Rawal forge a relationship with his granddaughter? These kind of things. I wish this had been the main movie instead of the fighting movie, which was super cliched, because there was nothing new in the fighting or the montages, or everything was like the frames were too clean, too like perfect. I love that the color tint in Sarpata. It was like this wonderful, there was this yellowish tint throughout that really gave an atmosphere of a whole movie being, lit by a street lamp or something like that. I really liked that. That tint really did a lot. The period setting did a lot, and most importantly, the characters like did a lot. See, I'll tell you something. In most movies, right, if you get the relationship between the coach and the boxer or the runner or the sprinter or the whatever it is sport guy, right, your movie is done. Because that's all the people, they've seen thousands of these movies. They don't really care like this is the 1001st movie, because above all, we are creatures of habit. We love watching things that are familiar with, but have a little bit of difference. And Ranjit gave us a lot of difference with all these fantastic characters, with all their fantastic quirks, and like with all these rivalries, not just between people but between clans. And there's that caste angle, and this movie just sprawls all over the place. And there's this mother, and there's this wonderful wife, and everything just comes to life. Whereas when you compare the Mariamma character with the wife in Tufan, she's just this simple plastic doll. I mean, like, what is she doing in the movie? I mean, you could take her out and you won't miss anything. That's what, like, it's like, it's not written as well, and it doesn't work as well. Abhay SS has a similar question. I've already answered the Tufan part of the question. Can Indian sports movies genre film be unpredictable, like Million Dollar Baby, where the main character loses? Will it work in a commercial point of view? Commercially speaking, we need that big Arya fight at the end with Vembuli, right? We need Kabilan to defeat Vembuli. That's going to get us on a high, and I really, really, really missed watching this on the big screen. From the first 20 minutes, I was like, oh my God, like, this is a big screen film. And I think that's the first time I felt it this year. But, just before that, there's that boat scene with Mariamma, and she says, Adena mano periya mano. Like, poi sanda podu. If it's your day, you win. If you are a good fighter, you win. Who's the better fighter wins. Where are you bringing Manam into this? So she's, in one line, she's delivered the most powerful line of the movie, which is basically like, what is this Parambara? What is this clan thing? What is this Manam thing with it? It's like, just fight. If you win, you win. If you don't fight, you don't win. That's it. I have a feeling you'll win, but it's not the end of the world. So imagine this situation, which I was discussing with a screenwriter friend the other day. What if Arya had gone in and thrown away his gloves and says, listen, I've already defeated Dancing Rose. I've already defeated you, Wembley, because you know what really happened in that match. And Wembley lost in that match. So there are people backing up Arya. So I really have nothing to prove anymore. I don't want any of this Manam business anymore. I'm just going to kind of walk away from this. And I'm going to walk away from this as an empowered guy, not as a loser, because now I know what to do with my life, and now I really know, what it is like to kind of may have the choice to kind of not get into this kind of fighting again, because my mother didn't really want it, and now I just want to lead a normal life with kind of thing. But that ending, though it might sound logical, won't work in a commercial movie because you need that big high, right? So at the end, when Arya says Sarpatta Parambarai, he says that, right? But then that kind of goes against whatever Mariamma just said in the previous scene. It's like, because he's like proud, like, wow, we've saved this clan. We are just like that, Manam is back, and she just said that. So that was an interesting thing to consider. But then you have to remember that Ranjith and Mari Selvaraj, they don't have the luxury that maybe a Neeraj Gaiwan or a Nagraj Manjule have, in that they're working in one of the most commercial of film markets of India, which is the Tamil film industry. Tamil and Telugu are the two most commercial of the film markets. And for example, I saw an interview with the director Amir about the movie Karnan, where he said that like he would have liked, like, because Dhanush was there, the movie was like an act of heroism. It became about one savior instead of like somebody, the community doing something to save itself. But I don't think you can help that. I mean, I really liked Karnan, but that's part of the nature when you just cast a big star. You kind of are bound by the fact that you have to kind of have him vanquish the villain, which is much more effective in commercial terms than something like him just saying, okay, I've defeated you, but now just go, or something like that, because that leaves you with that high when you leave the theater, and that really kind of helps. And believe me, all these calculations go into everybody's writing, not just like people who are making politically aware movies like Ranjith Amari Salraj. Every single filmmaker is like looking at, like, whether even if they're doing a love story, they look at it whether am I leaving the audience with a high? Even a fluffy like trifle movie like Okay Kanmani, I personally would have preferred it if they just said bye and like, okay, we solved the things. Now I'm going to America and I'm going to Europe, or I forget exactly where. But then we'll just kind of do everything. But then Mani Ratnam had to have that big fat wedding at the end, even though it kind of went against their principles. Like they were like why a wedding? Like, why do we need to get married? And especially such a like a big wedding, right? I mean, even if they did want to like do the wedding, why not just simply just do something like easy? Because you're leaving the audience on a high, and people know that these are calculations that are done because you want to make the people very happy as they leave their head, because you've been through this whole journey. Whatever it is, in commercial films, in mainstream films, you're kind of bound by the fact that you have to satisfy the audience. At least like 40% of your calculations will have to go towards whether the audience will like it and accept it, and then you get your 60% into the movie and say, this is the stuff that I'm doing for myself. So that's inevitable. Vignesh Rajaram says, it would be unimaginable to show a hero hitting his mother or falling at his wife's feet in the movies from the past generation. What do you think is the reason these could be shown today? Is it reality or changing societal norms? Dude, in Pudupettai, Dhanush has his dad killed. He goes and marries a woman at the time she's getting married to somebody else. In Parathiviran, Karthi, it's like he's unable to save the one he loves. He's the hero of the movie. He's unable to save the woman he loves, not just from death, but from something, like she's gang raped, and he's not able to save her, and he gets stripped at the end, and he kind of dies. I mean, like, these are not things that you could do before too long. When Bala, Amir, I would include even Subramaniapuram in that list, when these movies came around, there was a whole change that happened in Tamil cinema. Like, people were always wondering, can I make it this raw? Can I make it this raw? Should I just hold back? Or what can I do? What can I do? But these guys, they ushered in a whole new era of like bold raw sensibility, and I think that's what we're seeing continue today. So the fathers of this kind of cinema today, I would say, are really Bala, Amir, Sashi Kumar, even though he's made only one really great film, and people like that. Finally, Ganapati Avatan says, Pa Ranjith movies reception, Atakati good, Madras very good, Kabali mixed to good, Kala mixed, and now Sarpatta excellent. Did Ranjith miss his originality inadvertently when working with superstar Rajnikant? If Atakati had come from a known director, I think the response would have been excellent, because it is a magnificent movie from start to finish. I mean, I know of no other movie like in Tamil where the screenplay graph goes like this. Usually, if you read your Sid Field or whatever, you have an inciting incident, and then the hero has his challenge and then rises again, right? It's like a whatever, the 3-act structure or whatever you want to call it. Here, hero rises, falls, loses the girl, rises, gets the girl, loses the girl, faces a gang, runs away from them. It's like a bunch of hills. You kind of like, I have never seen a screenplay structure like this in Tamil cinema. I have never seen a guy being depicted like a loser in terms of the women and other things, and yet with such an innate charm that he is able to pick himself up from every situation with a positive attitude. I thought that was just amazing. And if we had known who Ranjith was then, or had it come from a bigger director, in terms of the opening and things like that, I'm saying, because we, at that point Ranjith was unknown, Santhosh was unknown, and Santhosh gave a fantastic score for that movie. I really think we'd be celebrating. I mean, at that point, Attakati would have been celebrated a lot more than it was at that point. I don't know. I don't remember if it was a hit or not, but at least I remember it wasn't like hugely like this major thing. I seem to remember that. Madras was like this very well appreciated film. Kala, Kabali, Ya, and Sarpatta. So I don't think it's Rajnikant as such. I see, the point is stardom is more like it. See, because even you cannot, it's not just Rajnikant, even with Karthi, you cannot do what you did with Arya here. You cannot show him drunk. You cannot show Karthi doing like falling at his wife's feet. Now, you could do in Parithiviran when he was not a star. Once you do become a star, there are certain considerations. I mean, I'm not saying you can't, but there is always going to be this question at the back of my mind, is that, will the audience accept it? Will the audience accept it if I take a big hero and do this with this thing, with this person? That question is running through your mind, and when the hero is as big as Rajnikant, your questions just double, because you have to kind of balance what you want to say with the fact that the populist elements have to be there. Look, for instance, how the Sarpatta has the populist elements, right? It's like Dancing Rose is one of the whole universe of this movie, right? He comes out of nowhere, and he's like hugely popular. Everybody loves him, but he's never even at one beat out of step with the nature of this movie. Take the Huma Qureshi character in Kala, for instance, right? She's supposed to be this person in first of all, I don't know why she had to be Rajini's ex-girlfriend or whatever it is, because it really added nothing to the screenplay. And when you have a character whose very definition adds very little to the screenplay, it always becomes a problem. Because anybody else, it could have, meaning that it could have been anybody who came from outside. It needn't have been an ex-girlfriend. The second problem with the character, she's done some slum development in Rio and Africa and all these places apparently, but she's applauding when a builder proposes like a complex with a golf course, and and you have that scene just so that somebody in the crowd there can say golf la inga aatam illa carom kabadi da inga aatam. So there is a reason that there, but that also makes Huma like a really ignorant person, right? She's not even doing some basic research about what these people want. I think she really like fit in very badly with that ambience of this movie, whereas here every single person like fits in, just like they fit in Madras, like they fit in Attakati. In Attakati, every person just fits in. They're within that universe of that movie. They function. Every person has a function. Every major, minor character, even Dinesh's mother in Attakati, you will see how she has like something to contribute in the way he behaves and things like that. You will find that his father has that in the drunken scene, what he does in Attakati. The Anbu character, the best character in Madras, you'll see how he contributes to this whole screenplay, because there's one side, there's this political stuff that he has, and one side there's this personal stuff that he has. So these are all characters that fit in beautifully, whereas only Kabali and Kala, I felt that there was a struggle in trying to kind of integrate the filmmaking with the messaging. And I guess that's what happens when you take on a big star and try to make a big movie. Unless the star is like Shivaji or Kamal, or in today's era Dhanush to an extent, where they have made a name for being different, in the sense the stardom comes from being different. Whereas if you take a well-established star like something like that, uh, I don't know what happens. Then again, Master just disproved this theory, right? Which showed that you can show Vijay drunk, you can show him as the person responsible for the killing of two kids, and still get away with a big hit. So yeah, I guess nobody knows the rules, but yeah, I'm glad Ranjith is back. Not just like I mean, his filmmaking in this film is astonishingly good. I mean, this is one of those films that at least I would be repeatedly watching, because his filmmaking is so good. And because he's as much that he has chosen this medium to kind of express his ideologies, that he should like at first of all be this able to speak this language, which he showed right in his very first movie, Atakati. And if you see the edits in that movie, the cuts in that movie, the staging of that movie, and in Madras again, the staging of that the murder and stuff like that, you'll kind of really see that this Ranjith is just a continuation of that. And I don't know, maybe like you say, Rajinikanth was the big question mark in those two movies, and that balance just didn't kind of happen properly. But hey, he's back, so all's good, right? Thank you for watching this episode of BR, and keep tuned to our social media handles, and to know who won the Fully Filmy prizes. Thanks, and keep watching Film Companion South.